Hello, everyone, and welcome to Profiling Evil podcast. Today, I'm talking with YouTube creator Shaun Attwood, a British social media sensation who's a former ecstasy trafficker turned YouTuber, speaker, activist, and author. You're going to love visiting Shaun's YouTube channel. He has like 700,000 subscribers and many more who are listening each week. Please join me in welcoming Shaun Attwood. And Shaun, thanks so much for being here.
Huge thank you for having me on, Mike. Real privilege and a pleasure.
Well, I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed the opportunity to come on your show and talk with you. And I've learned so much from you and some of the challenges, not only in your life, but through this wacky world of YouTubing.
Yeah, my channel was terminated twice in the last month, 2 visits to the police station, and all of this was over videos pertaining to child sex abuse cases.
Do you have any sense of why those were so troubling?
So I believe that YouTube is targeting QAnon channels and conspiracy channels, and the language used on those videos perhaps paralleled a lot of the language on my videos because we were covering satanic ritual abuse, we were covering elite pedophilia, and so on and so forth. So, YouTube, it's a strange entity. As these troubles were mounting, I actually I got the train, sorry, to London and walked to Google's headquarters in London and tried to get in so we could avoid what actually happened. And the security person at the door, I gave her a brief description of what the issue was, and she went to the reception and just came back from the reception with this: contact customer service, Google support. That's all we're going to do for you. So it came to a head, and the channel was taken down. And I believe once a person in management looked at it and realized that perhaps it had been taken down by an algorithm, then common sense prevailed because all the cases we reported on are documented in the news. They're high profile people involved in them, and YouTube allows an exception in its cyberbullying policy for high profile people, leaders of corporations, government, royal family members, etc. So I cited all that to them in my appeal because it was all cyberbullying were my violations, multiple strikes for cyberbullying. And then I believe common sense prevailed, but the next day the channel was gone again. So we had to go the whole thing. And if anyone's watching this and you're one of the people who contacted YouTube, Team YouTube on Twitter, huge thank you to the public because it was trending for 4 days on Twitter. People were up in arms, and I do believe it's thanks to the lobbying by the viewers that it got to a management person who could reverse what artificial intelligence did. And I'm just guessing that because Google will never tell you what actually happened behind the scenes. I asked them earlier on, how can we avoid this? What is the problem? What stuff do I need to avoid publishing? No response.
Well, this bucket called cyberbullying can be pretty broad. I mean, you were reporting things that were publicly reported by the press and others, and yet you had this charge. I'm really glad they pulled back the reins on that and allowed you to come back up. But what kind of a lesson did it teach you?
It taught me to pivot away from what I've been doing. I think we took it as far as we possibly could. For example, 60 million views were deleted. We had interviewed Maria Farmer before the gag order came on her. People at the forefront of this, like Ryan Roberts, who's been researching Epstein for 14 years now, Whitney Webb. We had an exclusive interview with Prince Andrew's Royal Protection Officer, Paul Page. And these reached millions of people, and they saw the diabolical scenarios, alleged scenarios of what we believe happened. So it was changing people's hearts and minds in a big way. And I've realized that once your platform gets to a certain size, and if you're going to start reporting on things that are featuring prominent people, you're heading for a collision course with those people. So I won't be surprised if, the legal teams of Prince Andrew or Maxwell were involved. But I don't want to say that YouTube. What I'm trying to say here is I appreciate the amazing platform YouTube is and the life-changing opportunity it has provided me. So, if YouTube has got these rules and it wants you to behave in a certain way, you can either just, you know, die hard and just go all out and just go down in smoke and then end up on some tiny little platform that gets no traffic, or you can adjust your behavior to abide by what they want. And that's what I've done. And, we helped people, survivors and things like that, of abuse, getting their stories out there and stuff. And we can still do that in a way, but we can't go to the high profile abuse level.
Well, I think that's really smart. And you absolutely have to play by their rules because they own the basketball and the court. And so it really does make good sense. I think it's really interesting. When I did a podcast on your channel, we were blocked from putting that out. And I'd like to just publish that on our channel. So if you want to get that to us, maybe the week following when this podcast airs, we'll play that and at least get it out because it's a topic we've talked about a lot on here, child sex abuse in a ritualistic cult. And the way in which we've approached it, YouTube hasn't had a problem. So maybe we get that content out because I thought it was a valuable interview and one that should be shared.
I was heartbroken because we interviewed you and then all this happened, which prevented us from putting it on the main channel. So I will send that to you this evening after this interview.
Oh, that'll be great. And I wanted to jump right in, Shaun, and talk a little bit about growing up in Cheshire, England. I want you to know I immediately felt this connection with you when I realized you were from Lancashire. And I hope I say that right. The home of Ian McKellen, who starred in The Lord of the Rings, if I remember right.
I did a schools talk in London where he was doing a schools talk at the same time. And I was absolutely blown away by hearing what he had to say. What an amazing guy. So I was born in a little chemical manufacturing town called Widnes, which was part of Lancashire at the time, but it got moved over to Cheshire, and it's presently still in Cheshire. So I didn't have much money growing up, but I got a weird fascination with the stock market at age 14. So only about 6 of us chose to do economics at my school. And my teacher, Mr. Dillon, he saw I had an aptitude, so he took me under his wing. He started giving me classes on my own, explaining all the numbers in the Financial Times, what they meant. And then at 16, I tried to borrow some money from my parents to invest in the stock market. They told me to bugger off because they were Labour supporters, and it was Margaret Thatcher was privatising British Telecom. Like, we're not bloody Tories like your nan. So then a light bulb went off over my head. My nan! So I ran down to my nan's house and got £50 off her, 50 quid, and put it into British Telecom, and it doubled on its first day of dealings. So I was hooked on the stock market from that age, went down the library, ordered dozens of books on the subject, and through my university years, I did business studies at Liverpool University, I was investing in all these privatizations. But by then, all my family members wanted to get in as well because they saw how much money I was making.
The family stockbroker.
The family Wolf of Wall Street, yeah.
That's amazing. Tell me about your neighborhood. I mean, a blue-collar neighborhood. Your mom and dad worked blue-collar jobs. Had to be a little bit of a rough and tumble neighborhood too, wasn't it?
So my mum was born on West Bank, which is on the River Mersey, and my dad was born come from Farnworth in Widnes, and we settled in a house in Appleton Village in Widnes. So very working class, very industrial, chemical manufacturing facilities all over the place. At the backdrop is a power station called Fiddler's Ferry, which has these giant chimneys. Now, when you cross the River Mersey, there's a bridge, and the factory, as soon as you cross the water, is called the Granics. So even to this day, when you're coming over the bridge, the smell hits you of the Granics. Now, when I was a kid, we'd be walking to school, and all of a sudden we'd smell something like death, and we'd all pinch our noses, and we're like, "What is that?" And we'd see like a giant truck had gone past us with all these dead animals' legs sticking out of it and everything. So the granics was where they took all the dead animals from our part of the country to be recycled into like oil and chemicals, or whatever they do with dead animals.
Oh my goodness.
National sport at my high school was to see how far you could spit a greenie. Now, because it's a chemical manufacturing town, the air pollution was chronic, and you've got all this phlegm, catarrh. Yeah, you got all this phlegm, like thick balls of green phlegm. So we call them greenies. So we see how far you could spit a greenie was like the national sport at the school.
You're killing me. I remember, and I don't know if it's the right part of the country, but I remember studying early serial killers. And it went back as far as the days when they were believers of witchcraft and hanging witches. And it seemed like it was that region along the river where they would take the suspected witches, that tie their arms behind their backs, tie their legs to their arms, and then throw them in the Mersey. And if they sunk and drowned, then it was proof they were a witch. If they somehow came up out of the water without the bindings on, then they were righteous people. Do you remember any of that?
Wow, you've done more research on that than me, Mike. I'm not familiar with it, but looking at the history of what happened back then, there was all kinds of industries profiting from that. The person who made the torture device, the person who made the execution stuff, the person who got killed. Where did their assets go? Their assets got liquidated into the justice system and all these parasitic entities. So it was a wealth transfer. Now look at the modern day equivalent. You've got this war on drugs. At the peak of it, you had almost 1 million arrests a year for weed possession. And look at how much it cost the taxpayers to house that person, $50,000-$60,000 a year. All this wealth getting transferred, but from the taxpayers now over to the same parasitic entities. So I see these parallels throughout history.
It's interesting. We do find a way to profit from everything, don't we? Someone finds a way to do that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this transition you made from legitimate empire building with your investing in the stock market to some of your more illegitimate forms of employment. But I want to mention first, I don't know if you knew, and maybe you do, but Stonyhurst College was the college of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes. Were you aware of that?
Where is Stonyhurst College? I've not spoke at that one.
It's in Cheshire, and that's about all I can tell you. Other than I've studied Sherlock Holmes and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle as an investigator, and I loved his concepts and his mystical way of solving crime. But I thought, oh man, you need to know that if you didn't know that. So
I'm learning so much from you this evening, Mike, about my motherland.
So you can tell me about Utah and Phoenix, and I'll tell you about England. Well, let's talk a little bit about this entrepreneurial spirit. You clearly were figuring out how to be a businessman at an early age and investing, but soon you kind of made a transition as you became a little more mature physically in life, maybe not emotionally yet. Let's talk about that introduction to the drug scene and what your life was like at that time, and how you ended up going down that path.
Okay, so business studies degree at Liverpool University. Moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where I had aunts and uncles. Got a job as a stockbroker, and it was proper Wolf of Wall Street style in the beginning. But by about 5 or 6 years into that, I was doing really well, and I brought my best mate over from Cheshire. Let me just show you a photo of him because he died last year. Yeah, this is the wild man, wild man. So when we were kids, Wild Man was 2 years younger than me. And at the top of my town, Widnes, there's a quarry. on this hill called Peck's Hill, and there's like an iron railings around the quarry, and we've sneaked through the railings, and we got on a tree that was overlooking the quarry, and we called it the thinking tree. So me, Wildman, and his cousin Hammy used to formulate our plans for our future, and we'd say to Wildman, what's your goal? What are you going to do, for the rest of your life? And he's like, oh, well, I'm going to end up in prison. I've got red dots in my head telling me to hurt people. And I said to him, no, Peter, we're going to get you a job as a wrestler. I'm going to go to America, make $1 million in the stock market, and I'm going to get you a job as a wrestler. So off I go to America, doing the stock market thing. Wildman goes off to prison for a violent crime, and when he gets out of prison, I fly him over, hoping to get him this job as a wrestler. I get him a place to live near the Georgian Dragon British pub in the centre of Phoenix, thinking he'll just have a Guinness with the expats and he won't get in any trouble. And then one day I'm at work and my aunt calls me and says, Peter's house is headline news. There's yellow tape all around it. Somebody's died. He might be dead. You need to get up there. So I drove up there, saw all the camera crews and the tape, got a bit intimidated and went back to work. But then I went back later in the day when the commotion had died down, and Peter's in his living room with a homicide detective. And what happened was someone had come over to get some drugs because they thought some Mexicans were there dealing drugs, because Wildman had rented his place out to a Colombian crack dealer a month earlier. And a couple had come over to get drugs, and Wildman had said, well, they're back over the street now. The woman went over the street. The man stayed with Wildman. He had a gun on him. Wildman had never seen a gun before, so he asked for a demonstration, and the fellow shot himself in the head while demonstrating his gun. So there was a corpse on the doorstep. So Wildman was taken in for the gunpowder test. It was shown, this guy had done this to himself. And but I thought I was going to get him a job as a wrestler and calm him down. And it just got more and more insane after that. He said he couldn't live there anymore. He's having nightmares after seeing this guy move. So I moved him over to a place on the west side. He was living with a bouncer and 2 women. And this bouncer was a big Chippendale blonde hair cowboy. Thought he was really tough. And I just wrote the deposit check. No, the first rent check for his first month. And I got a call from the lady that managed the rental office saying that he had to move out. I say, well, why does he have to move out? Oh, well, there's been a situation. He's attacked the guy he was living with. And I was like, well, how do you know that? How can you prove that? And she said the big Chippendale guy was seen running through the apartment complex in the middle of the night with plasterboard powder all over his face, and there's multiple human head-size holes in the walls. Fortunately, that all happened so fast, I was able to stop the check. So next thing, I move him over to Tempe, Arizona, because one of the women he was living with was like, I've got a boyfriend in Tempe, Arizona who's behind on his rent. If you can fix it, Wildman can move in there. Moved him in there, and it was 24/7 parties. And wherever Wildman went, I mean, he was a big guy. When he died, he was 29 stone. I think it's 14 pounds per stone. And he was 6'2", like 400 plus pounds and 6'2". Didn't have like a bodybuilder physique, but he was just massive and had a belly. So he had the physique of a bear. When he was on the run from law enforcement in Arizona, he was living in Mexico. They called him El Oso, the bear, because of his fighting style. But it was this apartment. It was Rancho Murrieta, Tempe, Arizona. Wildman had non-stop parties. The people in there were ranging from striptease dancers, Native American street walking, transgender sex workers, to Russian mafia, Italian mafia, New Mexican mafia, gangbangers. Now, I had anxiety as a young person, so wherever I went, Wildman everyone would come and talk to him. He was just the loudest person in the room. So I got to meet all these people through him, and that's how I made the criminal connections for the ecstasy trafficking enterprise. Because Wildman didn't last long on that visit. He ended up completely unhousable. He was living with a striptease dancer under a tree in Tempe Beach Park with a Rambo knife and a baseball bat next to him. And him and the striptease woman were going on the rampage like Bonnie and Clyde, just going in restaurants and not paying and all this kind of stuff. And he ended up getting deported, and the judge said he was a menace to society. But I kept smuggling him back in the country with Mission Impossible style teams of people through Mexico and Canada.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, so you find yourself dealing with this underbelly, and all of a sudden, this legitimate career seems like it's just not giving you enough of the thrill or the importance, or what it was, it Shaun, that
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my 20s. I'm a testosterone fueled guy in his 20s. I've come from a little chemical manufacturing town where I was nobody special. All of a sudden now I'm a character in the night scene. English Shaun, the Bank of England. I've watched all these exciting TV programs like Miami Vice when I was a kid, and seen these movies that glamorize that lifestyle. And I'm thinking I'm a character in a movie now, like that. And we were joking. We're living like characters out of Pulp Fiction or some kind of movie. And the drugs just fueled our insanity. We're telling ourselves we'll never get caught and all this stuff. We're having so much fun, This is so cool. And I think for people in the 20s, it's easy to fall into that trap because they don't see what's coming at them down that road. And it gets very dark indeed.
what is it about human nature, especially uh, younger human nature, that we're not patient to earn like our parents earned, to slowly build a nest egg, to pay off a house over time. We have this almost feeling that we deserve more, and we're going to take it.
Well, here's the strange thing about my situation. And I've written several books about Pablo Escobar, and I've understood now a certain psychodynamic, which I'll get to. I was worth a couple of million in the stock market, Mike. I didn't even need to be doing any of this.
Well, that's just it. So it's an issue of power and control, isn't it?
Pablo Escobar's brother Roberto said to him, Pablo, we're worth billions. Why don't we just get our own island, kick back? We won't get slaughtered by rival gangsters. We won't end up spending the rest of our lives in prison. And Escobar said, you want me to kick back on some deck chair on some island sipping a margarita when I employed 10,000 people. I put the president in power, the president of Colombia in power. It's not the money, it's not the drugs, it's ego, addiction to attention and the lifestyle. My ego was as big as the Grand Canyon back then.
Well, and that power and control becomes the drug, doesn't it?
It does. I had about 200 people working for me at the peak of it. Got my own security team, bouncers, throwing parties for up to 10,000 people at a time. All these beautiful women coming up to me. All these men coming up to me. Thanks for the party. Thanks for the ecstasy. The ego just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
So all of a sudden, the house of cards tumbles. You get arrested. Let's talk about that moment you woke up and thought, "What have I done?"
Oh my goodness. So I'd actually thought I got away with it, mate. A year before the SWAT team came, I met a woman, fallen in love with her, and she taught me out of the ecstasy trafficking. I was naive to the statute of limitations. So 10 witness statements were put forward to a judge to get a wiretap. They did wiretap like the people who used to work for me, and they caught me actually talking about personal use in code. Now, they never caught me talking about anything big because I'd already quit that. So when the indictment came down, it was like conspiracy was my main charge, serious drug offender status, which carries 25 to life. And it was May 16th, 2002. I was back at stock trading online. I was in Scottsdale Community College studying Spanish. I was with my love, thinking, we were hoping to move to LA. That was our plans. get out of town because we knew it was still quite hot for me after everything I'd done. And then all of a sudden, bam, 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 bam on the door. Open the door. So I jump up from the computer, look through the people, but it's blacked out. I hear all these boots just thudding up the stairs. I'm wondering, is it really the cops or someone impersonating the cops just trying to rob me? So I run to the window and look out. The whole building is completely surrounded. SWAT team. Go through to the bedroom, talk to my girlfriend. We're like, what should we do? Better let them in. We walk into the front door through the living room and then just boom! Door just flies off the hinges. Hands above your heads, get on the ground now, don't move. And I started yelling, I'm exercising my right to remain silent, love, over and over again. And they just grabbed me and threw me down the stairs outside. So I'm in this cop car, and this was like a scene out of a movie. So the driver, he's got the aviator sunglasses on, chewing tobacco. He's got 98 KUPD hard rock playing, and we're driving across the desert landscape, and it's like electrical light in blue landscape. I'm just thinking, oh my God, the moment of truth has arrived. I'm about to pay the price for my sins. But I was clinging on to the hope that because there was no drugs in the house, they were going to have to let me go. I didn't understand the complexities of a conspiracy case and the statute of limitations and all that. But as that unfolded in Sheriff Joe Arpaio's jail, as the screw tightened, that broke me down psychologically.
Well, folks, I'm talking with YouTube creator Shaun Attwood. He's not only a YouTube sensation, but he's a speaker, an activist, and an author. And we're talking about the moment in his life when he went from being free to facing Joe Arpaio's jail in Arizona, which is internationally known. I want you to know I actually took a ritualistic murder to Phoenix once to speak at a conference of a bunch of investigators. And he had agreed to come and talk about how he had murdered a couple of people and how God had directed him to do this. And I put him in Arpaio's jail and said, hey, Joe, would you hang on to him for a couple of days? He said, we'll treat him like gold. That inmate killer never got over the 3 days he spent in Arpaio's jail. Tell me about that experience.
That's why my jail memoir is called Hard Time, because people who come from the prison system who've got additional charges, and they just be shaking their heads in despair. They'd say, I'd rather do 3 days in Arizona Department of Corrections than 1 day in Sheriff Joe Arpaio's jail. This is hard time, dog. And it was an absolute drug and gang infested mayhem. As soon as you go in, the neo-Nazis come up to you and ask you what your charges are. They want to see your sheet, and they explain the rules. And these guys, one of them had a tattoo of Hitler, Sieg Heiling, over a gas chamber with Jewish people dying inside the gas chamber. That's how insane these guys are. It's all swastikas, lightning bolts. So I'm terrified. Like, hey, Wood, get in that cell over there. So I go in the cell, they close the door, and they've got me up against the wall. What are your charges? My charges are conspiracy, criminal enterprise. I had no idea what it meant. So I said, I don't know what my charges mean. Now that is not a good answer. They got me up against the wall, about to attack me. What do you mean you don't know what your charges mean? Are you a chomo? Are you a chomo? I didn't even know what a chomo was. Oh, chomos, child molesters. It's KOS, kill on sight. Kill on sight. Crimes against women or children. SOS, smash on sight. Pulled out my charge sheet. They saw I had a $750,000 bail bond. They loved that. They were like, $750,000? Dang, who did you kill, Wood? And I was just throwing raves, ecstasy, blah, blah, blah. So then they're like, they explain the rules. If someone calls you a punk or a bitch, you have to fight them on the spot or else the whole gang will attack you. Must take showers or else they'll attack you for bad hygiene. Can't go make your friends with the guards, they'll attack you for snitching. Can't go sit at the tables with other races. So I started working out with a La Victoria gang member. He was a Chicano called Sniper. Working out with Sniper one day, and the head of the whites comes over. Need to have a word with you, Wood. And I look at Sniper. He's like, talk to your people. So I go in the cell with these two tattooed neo-Nazis. And they're like, hey, Wood, look around the day room. Look around the day room. Do you see any other white boys working out with the other races? No. You got a lot to learn, Wood. Now finish your workout. Don't let that happen again. I was lucky that Wildman was arrested with me, let's put it that way, because he quickly established a reputation for being a maniac in the jail system.
Well, you spent like 2 years in county jail, right? And then you went to
26
prison.
months. I saw every little facet of that place.
You know, you were you in brick and mortar, or did you end up in tent areas?
So tent was minimum. So I started out in medium security. Then after a year, I asked for a bond reduction. They doubled my bond to 1.5 million, which put me into max security.
Oh my goodness!
Now max security was, I thought, hey, this is cool. We've got only 2 people in a room versus 3. But oh my goodness, after lockdown, the cockroaches lined up in the cracks in the wall just before lights out. They knew when the lights were about to go out. And as soon as those lights went out, they just flooded the room. So you got a choice. You could put a sheet around you and have a breathing hole like the mummy, but this is the Sonoran Desert, 120 plus degrees in the summer. You're so hot, there's no AC in there. There's a swamp cooler that barely works. So you're covered in bleeding and itching, skin infections, and bed sores. And your skin is so itchy, but you're sweating every day, constantly, stinking like a wet dog because you're sweating so much. And because you're itchy, you scratch yourself, and clumps of your own soggy skin come off under your nails. So if you wrap this sheet around you to protect you from the roaches, the heat is trapped to your body and it drives you insane. So you end up just throwing the sheet off and let them crawl on you. And you know, they start out on your feet, your legs. To this day, if anyone tickles my hands, I flinch because I woke up so many nights them tickling my hands. But they get on your face, your mouth, nose. The favorite place of all is to go into your ears to eat your earwax. It's like honey to them. So I would make a little flannel sometimes to clean my ears, wash my face. I'd rip a piece of towel and I'd get that flannel in my ears and get all the earwax out and hang it under the sink. And you see the cockroaches would swarm on it and they'd be pulsing on the earwax. And that's how I learned it was like honey to them. But I had a neighbor who was asthmatic. He wakes up one morning out of breath, grabs his inhaler, blasts a live cockroach inside himself, starts freaking out, saying he can feel it going around inside him. He throws up and it's stuck inside him and he can't even get it out. Even in the daytime, there's so many. The prisoners were doing cockroach races, gambling on the winner. But over time, because I was in max security, Madison Street Jail, for 14 months, over time, I just had to learn to live with them. And we had this Amerifresh toothpaste, which years later it came out our pile was getting it because it had some antifreeze ingredient in it from China. It was like some toxic poison. So I would cement all the cracks in the cell with this Amerifresh toothpaste to try and keep them out. And the room would smell really nice. And I remember one time I did that. I'd used all my tubes of toothpaste that I collected over the months. And then it came over the speaker system, Attwood, roll up, roll up. And they moved me somewhere that was even more infested, and I had no way of stopping them coming in. But I had to live in harmony with them. I learned all of their methods and habits. So they communicate by chemical smells. So if you start to like crush them and stuff, they'll release this smell, And warrior ones will come running in under your door. Pregnant ones have got this little thing that looks like a worm, but it's a sack of the babies, and they get under your bunk. And if they could get it under your bunk and that hatched, they'd be running all over your wall like this, all throughout the night. And just all the little babies would come out, and they do pretend to be dead in certain situations. Sometimes when you hit them and they look flat, they pretend to be dead. I'll be reading a book. An hour later, I'll look over and it's gone. And when you put them in the toilet, they go like this, but they're actually holding air to themselves so they can get oxygen to breathe, but they look dead. Honestly, how long have they been around? Like billions of years or something. They're so crafty.
You have taught me more about cockroaches today than I ever wanted to know, and I can't imagine how people are cringing as they listen to this, especially those who are a little queasy around bugs. This is absolutely incredible, and our time is just flying by so quickly. You end up enduring 5 years in prison.
Yeah, almost 6 years of total incarceration. So my sentence was 9.5 years. I served just under 6, 26 months in the jail, and then the balance in the Department of Corrections.
Holy cow! And then you're extradited back to England after this is over. I mean, how did it feel to get home?
Have you seen that movie Con Air?
Yes.
So the deportation officials come to the Department of Corrections. They took me to some deportation camp. I think it was Florence or Tucson, can't remember. And you're not allowed to know the date of your release for security purposes. So then one day they tell you to roll up. And that's when the Con Air thing begins. So I was getting flown across Arizona and California, just picking up and dropping off Mexicans. And I'm thinking, these guys are creating some work for themselves here. What's going on? Now, I picked up a little bit of Spanish, so the Mexicans were asking me to ask the guards things and stuff like that. But on the Con Air flight, you're all on these rows of prisoners in chains. Federal marshals are looking down at you. I think they were armed. You can't, use the toilet or anything. And then eventually they took me to LA, and that's where I got on a regular flight, was from LA. And when I spoke to that cabin crew from London, and they talked to me like I was a human being and not a number, I was so sensitive after 6 years. Like my heart chakra opened. Like I'm being talked to like I'm a normal person. It's amazing.
So you got back and you started to put your life together. You started. You actually appeared in a documentary. You started writing books, and then you created your YouTube channel, which I just think is great, and it made me smile. What I don't know about you, but I just love the subscribers and how they actually care about you. And when I mentioned that I was going to be doing an interview on your show, I had this sweet woman reach out and say, "Now, have you looked into Shaun closely? Are you aware of his background?" And I just thought that was so cool that they would do that. But you are really educating people not only on the dangers of drugs and crime, but you're making a difference. Tell me about your YouTube channel.
I saw the horror of what drugs led to in the jail. When I was partying and doing the Ecstasy, my decision-making processes were scrambled. I thought I was keeping the party going. I didn't see the harm I was causing. In jail, 90% were injecting heroin, approximately, and over half of them had hepatitis C from sharing dirty needles, yellow jaundice skin, teeth rotting out. And hearing the sad stories, these weren't paedophiles, serial killers, rapists. They were just low-level drug users, and that's what the majority of the prison population is, from what I saw. And hearing the sad stories, abused as kids, parents thrown away, raised on the streets, they didn't have the chances I had in life. I had a good education. I come from a loving family, so I felt doubly guilty for committing my crimes. So I said to a guard one day, "How'd you guys get away with this? Dead rats in the food, cockroaches crawling over us at night times, guards murdering mentally ill prisoners." And the guard said to me, "The world has got no idea what goes on in the jail, and the public doesn't give a shit about prisoners." So something in my head just snapped. The tiny little pencil sharpened on the door, I started to write everything down. My aunt smuggled what I wrote out of max security, put that on the internet as a blog, John's Jail Journal. My parents posted them. And it went on to attract international media attention to the conditions in Sheriff Joe Arpaio's jail. So that's what launched me as an activist. It was like a hand, an invisible hand, picked me up from this wild lifestyle and put me in a place where I was forced to grow up and confront my irresponsible behavior, mature as a human being, and try and help young people. Because when I got out, I thought I'm going to try to restore my karma now. Go in the schools. Young people don't understand what's coming at them down that road of drug use. I was joking. I'm in a movie. This is fun. This is exciting. And you think you're invincible when you're in your 20s. So I wanted to show those young people, and I scared the living daylights out of them with what happened, the consequences, for example, the conditions in Sheriff Joe Arpaio's jail. So I've been doing, up to the pandemic, I was doing over 100 talks a year across the country to these kids, speaking to hundreds of thousands of young people now. Now, as a blogger and an author, my content was mostly in the written form, but the YouTube channel was started in 2007 by my dad. I got released in December 2007, and I slowly just started to post, prison videos on that channel. About 3 or 4 years ago, two things caused the channel to really take off. I started posting on Making a Murderer when that came out, and I also went on the True Geordie podcast. He's a big one in the UK. He's got 2 million followers. So all the young people then were like, put more videos on your channel, put more videos on your channel. So I did. Now, I was blessed when I got out of prison. So many kind people who had platforms shared them with me and helped me get my story out there. So I felt it's important to help other people get their stories out there. So our first podcast guest was a guy who'd spent 34 years in a California prison for a crime he hadn't committed. And while he was in that prison, he found out he'd been born on the Isle of Man in the UK, and sold as a baby to a wealthy American family. He wasn't even an American citizen. So he was deported back to London when he finished his 34 years, where he knew nobody. We took him to the Isle of Man. The video went viral. He's got over 10 million views now on the channel. He's combined stuff. I introduced him to Mirror Group Books. He's got 2 book deals, and it's helped him turn his life around. And just recently, I was walking in Birmingham city centre, and the people coming up to me telling me the effects that the podcast had on their lives, especially during lockdown. One guy said, he watched the Wildman video, he's feeling down, contemplated suicide, and he watched the Wildman video, and it was so funny hearing what Wildman had been through and how he was joking about it. It stopped him from doing harm to himself. So it's amazing. And again, I feel blessed that YouTube has provided this platform that's reaching so many people and influencing their lives in ways I probably don't even know, unless I get this feedback from the people.
That is incredible, and I'm just really proud of you. You know, anyone can make mistakes. It's what they do with those mistakes and how they turn around and bless the lives of others that really is the mark of a human being to me. You've authored a number of books. What is your favorite book? Because I want to encourage everyone to go out and purchase that and read it.
Okay, so my life story is a trilogy. So it's Party Time, Hard Time, Prison Time. Party Time, I did spend a long time writing that book, so I'm proud of that one. More recently, though, I got into the conspiracy stuff. So there's 2 books that are quite hard hitting in that genre. So I've got Clinton, Bush, and CIA Conspiracies from the Boys on the Tracks of Jeffrey Epstein. And my most latest book, which is based on the content that was deleted from my channel, the 60 million views, is Who Killed Epstein? Prince Andrew or Bill Clinton?
Wow. Well, so where can people find that?
Oh, yes, all my books are available worldwide on Amazon in all 3 formats: ebook, paperback, audio. Just put my name into Amazon, Shaun Attwood, Shaun Attwood, and I've got about 15 or 16 books out there now.
That's fantastic. Well, Shaun, I really want to thank you for taking time to come on the show today and talk. And folks, I want you to know you can find Shaun's YouTube channel by searching for his name, just as he spelled it, Shaun Attwood, Atwood. I'm sorry, Attwood. And make sure you also check out his website at ShaunAttwood.com. Shaun, any thoughts you got as we close out the night?
Mike, I speak to you. I've been on a computer just doing, mundane things. And I speak to you, and you've got such good energy. You always put a smile on my face. You've just got a really nice way about you. And I know we both cover a lot of dark content, and it can wear us down psychologically from time to time. So, it's an absolute breath of fresh air to speak to you, Mike, and always a real pleasure. So, if there's anything I can do for you, just let us know.
Oh, thanks a lot, Shaun. I look forward to the next chat that we have. And folks, again, ShaunAttwood.com or Shaun Attwood on YouTube. The links are going to be down below, so you can go in and check those out. And we hope that you'll take time and subscribe to Profiling Evil on your favorite podcast platform. And Shaun, thanks so much for being here. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening. We'll see you all soon at the next crime scene.
Cheerio and toodaloo from London.